All right, so let's move here. Okay, so I have prepared these little things for you guys. Now, it's very important to use, and often we do not use it. I'm guilty myself. All right, to use the correct terms, because we have load transfer and then we have weight transfer. Okay, so today we're gonna find out the differences between load transfer and weight transfer, and find out what it means first of all, and what also is the difference between, in terms of, okay, how much is the weight transfer and how much is the load transfer. Okay, so let's try with let's start this part. uh, all of that because we want to understand what is happening um, if we have a narrow track or a wider track, or if we have a shorter wheelbase or a longer wheelbase. Okay, how the load transfer makes things differently. Okay, all right, so we start first of all with load transfer. Load transfer is what mainly happens on the car. So what is load transfer? Now, first of all, we have the center of gravity of the car. For those cars, it is more or less around uh, 400 millimeters, 40 centimeters from the ground. Okay, so the center of gravity is somewhere around 400 millimeters. Some cars stay at 380. Some cars are 410. We will take the 400, which is a good rounded number, and that's it. Now, when the car is stationary and nothing happens, okay, obviously the weight of the car goes to load the tires. Okay, and those cars usually are around 1400 kilos. Okay, without fuel, often without the driver. So we are going at about 1500 kilos with some fuel and the driver. So it's 1500 kilos. Okay, 1500 kilos, 1500 kilos. So what happens when the car goes into a turn? Okay, now the turn, the car accelerates because it rotates and makes a different line to turn around. So it has a lateral force. It gets something like this, by going into a turn. That force is acting on the center of gravity. Now, obviously, acting that force on the center of gravity, it means that the car is going to load the outside tires much more. Okay, so let's see if this is the correct. No, that's the other one. So it's going to load the outside tires right here, which means that this one is going to get more load, while this one is going to get less load. Okay, now why is that, and by how much? Right, so let's get one of the Bibles of uh, car engineering, handling, and so on, which is one of the biggest and most important books. It's Race Car Engineering by Mitchell, which is also the creator of the WinZeo software, one of the most famous softwares for car handling. Also, other stuff by Salinas, mathematical modeling, etc., etc. Anyway, this is one of the biggest and most important, books you can get. It has tons and tons of information. So, into this page, we have the formula for the load transfer, right? Which is right here, and I will write it down for you so that you can have a go. So, uh, what what is the formula for the load transfer? Where is the text here and here? Okay, so we have uh, lateral load transfer. Now that is equal to, so where is it? So weight, total weight, multiplied by the lateral forces, lat g, multiplied by the center of gravity, the height of the center of gravity. Okay, and all of that is divided by the track. Haha. So here it is, actually. Okay, and let me put that into a decent color for this stupid little program, but it helps what we want to do. Okay, and put it bold like this. So that is the equation to understand how much load transfer we get. Okay. All right. Okay, so since we have this equation, let's start to as you can see, it's pretty simple, right? It's pretty simple. So the first thing that we want to do is start, taking our variables and putting proper numbers into that. So let me double this, all right? And weight, we said we are at around 1,500 kilos, okay? Good. And lateral Z, now those cars laterally, they arrive at around, depending, let's say sustained lateral Z, 1.4, 1.5, let's say 1.4, okay, let's say 1.5, okay, 1.5 G. Center of gravity, we said it is around 400 millimeters. And the track is the distance, of course, from the center of one tire to the center of the other tire, which is usually at 1,600 millimeters, right? So this is it. So this is our situation. Now, if you put that into a calculator and you go like 105 multiplied by 1.5 multiplied by 400, okay, divided by 160, you get 562, and those are kilograms. 562 kilos are moved to the outside. So from the center, so you have like those 150 kilos, okay? So half of them will go on the one side of the car and the other half will go on the other side. Instead, you get like, here you get 750 to let you understand what is going on. Normally, here, you're gonna have, come on, little program, you can do it. Maybe not. Come on, program. No, the program doesn't want to do it. Let's try it again. So, text here. Let's put, so normally you have here 750 kilos. Okay, like this, and then you have another 750 kilos on the other side. Okay, that is the car stationary. Now, when the car starts to turn on 1.5 G, what you get is you get 750 kilos plus 562. All right, so you get something like this: 750 plus 562, you get 1,300 kilos on one side. So this becomes 1,300 something, what was it? 1,312 kilos. 12 kilos on one side, okay? And on the other side, of course, you get 750 minus 562 was something like this, 182 kilos. So this is an incredible amount of load transfer, all right? So this is what happens in your car when you are at the limit of the grip. When you're turning at the limit of the grip, the outside tires get a load of 1,300 kilos, and the load on the inside tires is 188 kilos. Now, on top of that, you get the downforce. The downforce gets, divided equally, both left and right, more or less. So you get an incredible amount of weight transfer, right? So this is why even when you have small amounts of difference of weight at the front or at the rear, you get the car to move around in understeer or in oversteer, because even small differences front and rear changes the whole equilibrium of the car. All right. So as you saw, this is the load transfer, and it is a very, very big amount of transfer on the load of the tires. Okay. Now, this happens either you have suspension or not. In the go-karts, you don't have suspension. Even if you had wooden tires, that would happen anyway, because it depends on the lateral g-force or longitudinal. It's the same. Okay. Obviously, the load will change front or backwards. So either it is lateral or longitudinal. So it depends on the acceleration that you have, lateral or longitudinal. It depends on the center of gravity height. So that is why the single seaters can accelerate much faster, because their center of gravity is lower. Okay. And lower center of gravity means that you have less weight transfer, and the less weight you have less load transfer, and the less load transfer you have, the more grip you can create. Okay. And I will explain you why in a minute. And also it depends on how big is the track width. The longer the track width, again, the less, because as you see, it divides everything. Longer track width or wheelbase, if we're talking longitudinally, less load transfer. Now, why we want to have less load transfer? Now, here's the situation. Let me do a new page. Now, the tires generate grip in a particular way. So let's say that, sorry, I haven't made that before. So this is practically a graph we're trying to do. Okay. So in this graph, oops, wrong tab, sorry about that. We are in here. Hopefully it maintained. Yeah, okay. So here how the tires generate grip. Now, this is the grip. So let me put here grip of the tires. Okay. Or actually, no, let me put this load. Sorry, that's easier to understand. Load. Okay. And here we have, now actually it's the other way around. Sorry about that. It starts to become late. So grip again here, and load here. Okay, nice. Okay, so this is what happens. Now, as the load raises from 0, the tires generate grip. 1 to 1, 1 to 1, and so on. Now, the problem is, and here's the big problem with the tires, and that is why we're trying to minimize the load transfer, have less weight on the car, all that stuff. Okay. Now, the more the load goes up, the more grip you have, but it doesn't stay linear. By adding more and more load on the tires, okay, the tires start to generate less and less grip. Okay, so this is the situation. This is what the tires do. Okay, so at some point the tires don't even generate any more grip. You want to have a very simple example of that. Okay, this is pretty impressive if you can do it. So um, take your finger, right, and just slide it into any surface. Okay, now obviously you can feel some grip. Okay, so you slide your finger into a surface and you feel some small resistance. Now when you're pushing your your finger down the surface, you feel more resistance. This is grip. You generate more grip because you're pushing more. Now if you keep pushing as hard as you can, possibly obviously don't break your finger, but push your finger into the surface as hard as you can. Okay, and you will notice that you can still slide your finger around. There is no way that you can push hard enough to not be able to slide your finger around. You can push as hard. You will feel, heat, lots of heat, because that is what's happening when you are, sliding around, and also to your tires. But you cannot stop your tire from your finger from sliding. This is because all the rubbery things, the leather is a rubbery thing in the end. They generate grip in the same kind of way. You keep adding load and you get more grip, and then at some point, the load, the grip starts to generate less than the amount of load that you are adding. So you add more load, but the grip is less. Okay, you're not. It's not. It doesn't continues linearly. So you give like one load, just a number, one, let's say 10 kilos, okay, and you get one grip. You give two load and you get 1.8 grip. You give three load and you get 2.5 grip. You give four load and you get 2 grip. So you see, they don't go up at the same time. So um, so John Smith now has graining on his fingertip. Um, keep the temperature correct and do smoother, slides around, and you see that the graining will go away. Don't keep doing it because you're gonna get blistering, and that's pretty bad. Okay. So if CC Driver says, "What should my wife think?" If your wife, gets inside to your room and sees you doing that, just tell her that you are, watching some porno stuff. It's safer than telling her that some Greek guy told you to do this with your fingers. So it's much better, trust me. Okay, so this is why we are trying to limit, the load transfer, because the load transfer is a lot, and the less it is, the more we can deal with the grip generating by the tires. Okay, so as we said, one of the most important things is the track width. You see, everything you do here, you divide it by the track width. So if the track width is wider, then the load transfer is less. And so you have a better situation of grip from all the 4 tires. Okay? And that also happens in the same exact way with the wheelbase. With the wheelbase, you have load transfer to the front when you are braking and to the rear under acceleration. Okay? Now, the shorter the wheelbase, as we said, the Porsche has a very short wheelbase, the shorter of all of the cars. Okay? The shorter the wheelbase, the higher the load transfer will be. We explained that why here, because here you won't have the track width, but you're gonna have, because it's gonna be longitudinal, you're gonna have the wheelbase. Okay, so instead of track here, let's get those things. Whoops, sorry. Let's get copy and copy past them here, and this becomes wheelbase, right? So this becomes wheelbase, And that obviously goes to something like, I don't remember, for the Porsche, it's something like 245, something like that. Okay. Um, so this is it again. And you can understand the load transfer. Now, if instead of 2,450 millimeters, we have something like 300 millimeters, which is the wheelbase of the Bentley or the BMW, it's almost 3 meters long. Okay, you can understand that the load transfer between back and forth is much less, and so the car is more stable when you are braking, when you're going over the curbs, like while accelerating or braking, and so on. While the load transfer on the Porsche, which has much shorter wheelbase, is much higher and faster. Okay, and because of that, the car is more reactive and more nervous. It's good because it's agile, but it's also more nervous. So this is what it happens with load transfer. Everything clear up to here? Right. So how is the load influenced by the stiffness of the springs? Ask Poasma Uia. Uh, well, it doesn't really influence the the load, the amount of load. Okay, the stiffness of the springs or the arbs doesn't really influence the amount of, well, the arbs not exactly. Sorry about that. The stiffness of the spring doesn't really influence the amount of load transfers, but it does influence the speed of the load transfer. Because obviously, if you have a car that has no suspension, the load transfer will happen instantly. You turn the wheel and boom, all the load transfer goes into the outside tires instantly as you move your steering wheel, right? Now, when you have springs, when you have suspension, you move the steering wheel and obviously you get some load transfer, but at the same time, the whole body of the car starts to roll, okay, or starts to pitch, okay, depending if you are longitudinally or laterally. So laterally, it starts to roll. While it is rolling, it absorbs some of the load, which means that at some point it will end the roll, and all the load will go and move at the outside wheels. But in the meantime, the load happens a little bit slower. So that difference in speed of the load happening uh, helps you maintain a different control on the grip of the two axes. Okay, so for example, you put stiffer springs at the front, and so the load at the front will happen before the rear. Okay, that will make the front end more precise and fast because the load will happen, the load transfer will happen faster. But when you will, reach the peak, then you will also go over the peak, and you will going to have, understeer, right? Because you are arriving at the peak sooner, and you obviously going over the limit sooner if you have a stiffer front end. Likewise, and vice versa, if you have a stiffer rear end, and so on. Okay, so this is the load. Okay, this is the load. Now, um, how about the weight transfer? Now that's interesting. The weight transfer is different than the load transfer. We always say about weight transfer, but what we really mean is the load transfer, because as you saw, the load transfer is much. It's really big in terms of numbers. The load transfer is really big in terms of numbers. How big is the weight transfer? And most importantly, what is the weight transfer? So let's go here. Weight transfer. Okay, weight transfer. We have the same exact situation as before. It's a car, center of gravity, load equally divided. Okay, in your four wheels. We just look at two of them, but just imagine that there are another two of them behind. Now you start, turning, and when you turn and you have a suspension, what happens? The body of the car rolls Okay, so the body of the car rolls. Also, the tires are compressed differently, and the tires also help adding to the roll amount of the car. But let's not go into this. Let's imagine that the tires are completely stiff, wooden tires, and we have the body of the car rolling. So what is going to happen? Well, here's what is going to happen. We're going to have a car rolling. It's exaggerated, of course, in the graph so that you can understand. Okay. And by rolling like this, the center of gravity will move outside. This is the new center of gravity. Perfect clear, right? It's obvious now. The car rolls. Because the body of the car rolls, the whole center of gravity moves towards the outside. Okay? Cool. Right. Um, so what happens next? Sorry about that. I was watching at the chat. Okay. So what happens here? Well, because obviously the center of gravity moves towards the outside, it means that we don't have the weight of the of the body of the car, which is the bigger one, right? We don't have that weight of the body equally distributed left and right. It's not equally distributed anymore because in this condition, as we were before, okay, the center of gravity is exactly at the middle, so you have half of the weight at the left tires and half of the weight at the right tires. Now, in this new situation, okay, the center of gravity is not in the center of the track width anymore, which means that the one side of the tires will get more weight than the other side. Now, for the sake of simplicity, we will not calculate the load transfer. As you know, the load transfer is a lot when we turn, but for the sake of the simplicity, let's say that load transfer doesn't happen for whatever reason. Magic. Magic. Okay. So we don't have load transfer here. Okay. But we do have this center of gravity movement on one side. Now, by how much? Okay, by how much? Now, here's what's happening. We can calculate how much the center of gravity moved to the one side. So let's first put a vertical line here. Okay, so this is the vertical line in exactly the middle of the balance situation. Okay, and now we are moving the car in roll. So this vertical line obviously rolls. Okay, let's move a circle here to point our rotation. So from there we have a rotation. Now what that means that practically we have a triangle. Okay, this is our triangle here. Let me see where I have it. Here it is. We have a triangle. This is the place. Okay, this is the line, the vertical line that goes to the old center of gravity. This is the parallel line that goes to the new placement of the center of gravity. And here we have an angle of the triangle. Okay. Now, so what can we do? We want to find out how much the center of gravity has been moved to the one side. Okay, so we want to find out this part here. Okay, this part here. Let's make it green like this so that we can have a look. Oops, sorry. Okay, so we want to know exactly how big is the movement. Now, because we have a normal triangle with a little bit of trigonometry, we can find out. Okay, so what we need to do? We need to get the tan of this angle and multiplied, I think, by the adjacent here, this part of the triangle, and that will give us the length of the opposite. So we need to know the amount of roll. Usually on those cars you are at from 2 to 3 degrees, something like that, not much more. So let's take 2 degrees. Okay, so let's take 2 degrees and find out the tan should be here. I think this is it. So it's that strange number and multiply it by that side. That side is the height of the center of gravity. So it's 400. Boom. 13.9, so let's say 14 millimeters. The center of gravity has moved 14 millimeters to one side. Okay? So if we know that, then we can do again, we have everything here on the book. I think it's here. Oh, I've lost the page, but anyway, I think I can find out that by myself. So the weight, so let's find this out. Maybe I have it somewhere here, saved it. I think I found it. Okay, so we don't do any error. So the weight on one side, let's say, yeah, this side. So what's going to be that? So it's the weight of the vehicle, okay, multiplied by the center of gravity. The center of gravity distance from the wheels, okay, lateral distance from the wheels, divided again by, okay, so let's do the center of gravity from wheels, lateral. I don't know if you can understand that. And again, divided by the track width of the car. Okay. So, oh my God, it's green. Dear God, green. Okay. So bold, something like that. I hope I've written this correctly. Now, that becomes something like this. So we have the weight that it is 100, 500. Okay. Now this is normally, because the track is 1,600 millimeters. Oops, like that. This will be 800. 800. Okay. This is normally when the center of gravity is in the middle. But we said that this is no longer the case. Okay. This is no longer the case because we have this one that is 800 plus what did we had here? 14 millimeters extra. 14 millimeters. All right. So this is going to be our weight on one side rolling. Okay. So let's see what we got here. If we did everything correctly, forgive me if I made any error. So 100. Whoops. So actually, let's do 100 multiplied by 814. Okay, divided by 106, 763. 763. So we have 763 kilos here instead of the 750 kilos. Okay, because normally what do we have here? We had, I hope you remind, we have 750 kilos from each side, which brings us to 150 kilos total. All right. So we have something like this. And now we have 763. And obviously, on the other side, we're going to have, where is my calculator? We're going to have 150 minus 763, 737. Okay, so at this point here, we're going to have 737. Right. So this is the end result. So as you can see, um, the difference is 13 kilos. This is the weight transfer. Actually, it's even less because you know what? We did something we shouldn't have done. Now, here we said that the whole weight of the car is 1,500 kilos, but in reality, the center of gravity moves just for the body. The wheels, which are about 100 kilos all around, okay, uh, they are not part of this body movement. So this should have been 1,400 kilos. So the end result would be even less than 13 kilos. Just 30 kilos of weight transfer. It's still important. It's still important, and you can still change it by having different roll bars, dampers, springs, and so on. But it's still very low, and in comparison to the load transfer is practically nothing. So the most important thing is the load transfer, and then another important thing is the weight transfer. But again, that's why aerodynamics are so important, and the difference in speed of the load transfer and the difference in load transfer between front and rear axis is what matters. What matters. Obviously, if you have something much wider in roll, so let's say that you have a street car that has 10 degrees of roll, then things start to become uh, uh, much more important. So, for example, if you have 1,500 kilos of street car, and usually all street cars are even more. So let's say 1,600 kilos. All right, and you have shorter wheelbase. So you have something like I don't know, 1,500 millimeters, and you have 10 degrees. So 10 degrees of roll. Let's go get the ton is this one multiplied by half a meter of center of gravity, because usually street cars are around half a meter. So multiplied by 500, already this thing becomes 88 millimeters. We had 16, 14 millimeters before, and now this one on a street car, it becomes 18 88 sorry 88. Massive difference. So if you do all the calculations, you see that you have one person moving around when you are turning around into a street car. But let's not go into that. So so here's the situation, and here's the difference between load transfer, weight transfer. Again, I'm oversimplifying wherever I can, because as you can see, there's lots of things in here, maths stuff. Things are more important, but the fact of the speed of the load transfer, again, it's not correct. We talk about the speed of the load transfer, right? It's not correct. But it is a simple way to understand what's happening. It really helps our athletes. It really helps me to understand what I'm doing when I'm making one axis stiffer than the other one. And that is also with dampers, springs, all of that stuff that limit the body movement. When you limit the body movement, the load transfer in my mind becomes faster, and that means more precision, but also going over the limit sooner. Okay, while when you have everything softer, it means less precision, because you have to do something and wait for the car to take set to make the load transfer, but also because everything happens slower, it gives you more time to react and not go over the limit. So we're still talking about less of a tenth of a second stuff, but every little thing helps you, because as we said, we humans are slower than reality. Reality happens in tenths of a second. We need at least 2/10 of a second of reaction time of reflexes. So every time you can gain a little bit, for example, the very fast sim racers, aliens, probably have reflection times that are close to 150 tenths of a second. Okay, normal guys are around 200 to 250 tenths of a second. Very slow guys, unfortunately, there are also guys like that. They are like 300. So those guys need a slower car with a slower load transfer. Okay,